I'm pictured right there, and I'm part of a two-person team talking with you today. That includes Graham Curtis, unpictured, but the real star of the show is he's going to be walking you through a demonstration of our solution. And so the welcome complete, what we'll do is a quick overview of Zetta with me talking, then we'll move on to the Business Continuity Suite and the demonstration, as well as some Q&A. And we'll try and get that done in about 30 minutes or so. So thanks very much for joining us. So how long have we been around? Zetta's been around since 2008, and we originally developed as kind of primary storage. That was the thought back then. It was folks with IT execs with a track record of building really big scale operations, places like Netscape and Shutterfly, Shopping.com. So places where they really had to make sure that the system was up and running all the time, that moved a lot of data around. So that's where a lot of our IP and our capabilities lie, in both moving data around as well as storing it carefully. And so to this point, about 2,000 companies rely on us for uninterrupted access to their systems, no matter what happens. So we're talking people like Blue Jeans, GoPro, Marriott, the Salvation Army, et cetera. And pretty much all walks of companies. So we have everyone from small dental offices all the way up to large international design companies that build hospitals. So we do a lot of business with a lot of different people, and we've got a lot of partners that provide businesses with service across the board. And one of the reasons they do that business with us is that we got some differences out there that not everybody has. As far as our disaster recovery solution, we fail over in under 5 minutes. That's pretty darn quick, right? So you're not losing a lot of time if something needs to happen. Likewise, we put a lot of our IT and a lot of our intellectual capacity around making things move over the web as quickly as possible, as well as identifying what to move, and in the end, moving as little as possible. So in the end, what that means is that we end up with like more than 95% of all of our backups completing in less than 8 hours. So the bottom line is when people work with us, they generally see really fast upload and download speeds, and they get their backups done in the time frame that they promised to their customers. Having said that, it's not complicated. It's very easy, right? So it's a no hardware-based solution. It allows a local backup if you want to put that on a NAS or a SAN or a drive sitting on a server if you like. But we're just not going to sell you a piece of hardware with the Zetta name on it. But you do have a local option. We also provide end-to-end service from backup all the way over to failback, managed via single pane of glass. And it's affordable. We do things pretty simply here at Zetta. For the most part, the amount of what you pay is based almost entirely on how much storage you have. So there's no extra charges for calling in for support, or how many agents you need, or how many endpoints you have, or how much bandwidth you utilize. It's all based on how much you store. And then finally, that cost, depending on the size of your company and how much you're storing, we can get down to where you can be competitive with Amazon and Azure, so that you can be sure that your customers are getting an affordably priced solution that matches what they need. So I guess bottom line is, question is, why would you partner with Zetta? Well, as I said, it's easy to use, it's built for performance, provides you with strong margins, right? Furthermore, the professional services are provided at no extra charge. And here's something else that we're really proud of. We have 24/7, 365-based support, and that's US-based support out of our headquarters here in Sunnyvale. And all that support is provided by engineers. So far this year, we've taken something on the order of 3,000 plus phone calls. Not a single one has gone to voicemail. We don't have people who pick up the phone and then promise that Graham is going to get back to you in an hour or so. Graham is the one picking up the phone, or others in of his caliber. And in the end, we built a solution that provides enterprise-grade security as well as reliability. So now I'm going to hand it off to Graham to talk a little bit about our Continuity Suite, and then just walk through a demo so you can see what we're talking about. Graham, it's all yours.
Okay. So just to prep and get started here, there's kind of a sliding scale of disasters here that we like to look at. And the most common is deleted file, dropped laptop, lost phone. Just if some file goes missing or a virus hits it, you need to get just an individual file or folder back. Next most common is a single server blows up, hard drive failure, RAID array failure, whatever it is. And the least common, which again we hope never happens, a complete site destruction, natural disaster, earthquake, fire, flood. For whatever reason, the entire site goes down as inaccessible. And we have solutions for all three of these options here. So this is our portal. It's a one-stop shop interface here where you can really manage all of your customers' backup needs and see what's going on with their backups. On the left-hand side here, you'll see the list of customers that we're backing up for. We have a nice little cheat sheet on the left-hand side. Here, green means everything was good. Yellow means that it completed with at least one system having warnings. Red would mean at least one had errors. And then there's a little red X in the middle. It means at least one system missed its sync. On the right-hand side, we can quickly and easily see how much usage the customer is having. We can see it over time. You can expand or change the time range. And you can see them either relative to the largest customer, so the smallest ones look smaller, or you can expand and see just relative to themselves, so you can see this one customer actually had quite a bit of growth relative to themselves. Drilling into an individual customer, we can look at their systems here. This is really where it starts for the customer. Step one is to download the replication agent. We have 32 and 64-bit versions for Windows, Linux, and Mac. It's a lightweight client, around 7 megabytes. You download and install it, then you register it to the customer's suborg account. Then from there, virtually everything is managed from the portal. Looking at a particular system, you can go into the configuration. Top portion here is where we generally like to start. It kind of sets a default for the entire system. You have the default retention policy. Again, you have complete control over this, starting at a minimum of 7 days. You choose the number of daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly snapshots you'd like to keep. We can run backups on a schedule where you choose what time of what days that should run. So this one's set to run at midnight every day. Or you can set it to run every 6 hours. Again, we can work with you if you need it more frequent than that. Lastly is the network throttles. So we have multiple 10 gig lines going into both of our data centers, and we don't believe in throttling you. If you need to get a file back at 2 in the morning and you have a gigabit connection, you need to get it back quickly, we'll give you that entire connection. Similarly, if you want to back up things as quickly as possible, we'll give you everything that your network can handle. Downside is we can shut down your network. We've actually had instances where customers have had 2 different systems trying to back up at the same time. Nobody set a throttle, and there was a red alert set when we shut down not only their primary network, which was a Comcast network, we shut down their backup, which was a Verizon fiber network as well. So once they figured everything out, they went back in, set throttles, and then everything was good. Again, throttles are quick and easy to set. Just set what time, how many kilobits per second, on which days and at what time. And you can have as many as you want as long as these don't overlap. It's worth noting, as Joe said, over 95% of our customer systems sync in less than 8 hours. So that's overnight when no one's working. Once the initial sync is done, there's really, the throttle comes into play a lot less. So that's the defaults at the top that you're going to want to set for the system. Next step is setting tasks or what you want to back up. So one that everybody has, unstructured data, files and folders here. You just put your backup path in here. You can go in. I can navigate to wherever I want on that system. In this case, I'll back up the C users folder. And just paste that in. Alternatively, you can obviously just type that in. Then we get to the task preferences. So we have a default retention policy for the system, but every job underneath can have its own retention policy. For example, if you have a documents folder, a C users folder like this, you probably want to keep that for about 31 days. If you have a SQL database where if something goes wrong, you know right away and you need to restore something relatively recent, probably want that one on more of a 7-day retention policy. And obviously, you have tax documents. You have to keep those for 7 years for compliance reasons. You probably want to keep that for 7 years. And every folder you do can have a different policy. And we have archive deleted items. So again, not a good idea for something like the C users folder where things are removed constantly. But it basically means whenever you remove something on your side, we don't on ours. It stays in your history forever. Again, very useful for tax documents folders, so no files accidentally get deleted. They're kept forever outside your retention policy. And lastly, here's to create a local backup. So again, we don't want to sell you any hardware, but if you already have a NAS, a SAN, or USB drive you attach to the systems, we're happy to put a copy of your most recent backup there. So as long as we have read-write access to it, it's fine. It can be a UNC path, it can be to a SAN, a NAS, again, a USB drive. And we have exclusions. So we're backing up C users. C users often includes people's iTunes folders. Not everybody wants to back up everyone's music library, movie library. I think my sister has a terabyte of stuff in that folder. I wouldn't want to pay to back that up. So there's a couple ways of dealing with that. You have file level, where I can include star.mp3. Now exclude every file we have with MP3 extension. We do accept those wildcards. You can go folder name. So you can exclude the folder named music, or again, as our example, folder named iTunes. And for every user, everywhere we find a folder with that name, we would exclude it and all of its contents. Or you can go absolute path, right? Instead of excluding everybody's iTunes folder, there's just this one user, John Doe, who has a music folder that I'd like to exclude. Additionally, we can exclude everything over or under a certain size, or new or older than a certain date or number of days. Moving on, we have a couple of other tasks here. As far as plugins go, we have plugins for SQL, System State, NetApp, and Exchange. And then if you want to get entire disk images, so you can restore an entire system, or if you purchase our DR product as well, you can actually spin those systems up in the cloud. We have Windows Image Backup, which works either on bare metal machines or on guest OSs and virtual environments. And we also have plugins for Hyper-V and a virtual appliance for VMware. It uses VMware's APIs to communicate directly with those systems on the back end and have an agentless approach to backup. Again, they're all very easy to configure. Windows Image Backup, for example, just select which disk or disks you want. Again, that local backup is always available here. Add that task and we'll back it up. So that's how you get things backed up. That's the first portion, right? But when we were looking at our sliding scale of disasters, the most common is a file goes missing, right? You need to get that file back. So backing it up is only as useful as long as you can actually get those files back. So to do that, we have the restore option here. You can go in, you just click restore. Select which task you want to restore. Again, if you have multiple files and folders, they'd show up here. And you select which version you want. So I can go through here and can say, all right, I need a version of this file. The last time I knew it was good was Tuesday. Let's go into our Tuesday snapshot. And here's the drive image. Again, if its entire drive goes down, entire server goes down, you want to restore it, you can restore the entire image in IMG format, in VHDX format. If you are using VMware, we can actually restore it directly down to a system and attach it to the system of your choice as a drive. So getting the individual file and folder out is also very easy and quick here. You don't have to restore the whole thing. You can just go in, browse down to the folder that you want. Again, it's a fully substantiated file system. Doesn't matter which restore point you're looking at, you'll be able to find what you're looking for and get to the file. From here, you have a couple of options. Just this file, I can right-click, downloads in my browser. I can email it off to whoever requested it. Everybody has their file, everybody's happy. It was quick, easy, and painless. Now, if it's a larger file, an entire folder, or you just want to restore directly to a system rather than putting yourself in the middle there, you just right-click that folder, restore folder using the application agent. And from here, you select the destination system. Destination system is any system on that same suborg that's been registered to it. It can be the same system, which is what it defaults to, or it can go to a different system. For instance, if a server died and you're rebuilding it. Destination path pre-fills out to where it came from. Click Start Restore, and it restores directly down to that location. The other option is we are fully WebDAV compliant, which means that you can mount your cloud network share as a network drive that you can then browse, search, and restore as if it's mounted on your network. Just the one note there is it is read-only, so you don't have to worry about anybody with a CryptoLocker virus or anything else accidentally infecting anything or deleting something old in the cloud. So again, that deals with the most common disaster. The next most common is an individual server going down. So for that, we're going to go into our disaster recovery option here. So file server went down. I need to spin that up in the cloud. Everything's pre-configured. You selected how much RAM it has. You've configured what Microsoft licenses it has. This one just has Windows. You just click Activate at this point. You choose which date you want to activate from. So again, we're going back to Tuesday. That was the last day we knew before we got the virus. You hit Activate VM. In less than 5 minutes, this system will be up and ready to use. It is worth noting that we do boot every system once a month and take a screenshot, so you can see that we're actually getting a backup that works and boots. So system's up in the cloud, that's great. The next step is actually being able to access it. So there's different kinds of access you might need for a system. One is external access. You have a web server, you have an Exchange server, you need some way for people outside your network to be able to access it. For that, we have standard port forwarding, just like any router. You select which VM you want, internal port, external port, protocol, TCP or UDP. Add the rule. You can have as many rules as you need. The important thing to note here is that this IP address that you get here is static, does not change. Every one of your suborgs that signs up for this gets their own. Additional are available on request, but again, this doesn't change. It goes into your alternate DNS host. It goes into any planning that we have, just so that you're ready. Now, for internal facing things, like an SQL server or stuff that only people you want in your office field to connect to, we have a couple of different options. So again, going back to that sliding scale of disasters, single server blows up, right? We need to get just that one server up, but we need it to be able to continue to interact with my office. We need to be able to continue to interact with other systems it's interdependent on. So for that, we have site-to-site VPN. And for that, we have a small virtual appliance that we deploy on your side that we then use to bridge our two networks together, your cloud network and your local network. From that point that's set up, it's always on, it's always ready. So when you spin that system up in the cloud, it appears as if it's still on your local network. You update your DNS settings, and then anyone on your local network is able to continue interacting with that system as if it were on the network. Now, heaven forbid, the least likely or least common disaster hits you, complete site destruction, fire, the building shut down, no one can get in, people need to be able to continue working. Again, here on the sliding scale, it's the last one here. We have point-to-site VPN. So again, in this case, you'd spin all of your servers up. Everything's pre-configured. We've made sure there are enough resources allocated to you that you can spin all of those systems up at the same time. And you have point-to-site VPN. So they install an OpenVPN client on their system. It can be Windows, Linux, or Mac. We have it configured. They log in with the VPN client. We have a configuration that they can input in directly, and they're able to access that as if their individual system was on that cloud still. So again, they can be off at Starbucks and continue working, continue providing value to that company. Lastly, these are all great once the system is up and running, right? But the first time you boot it, there may be some configuration changes you need to make. You may need to see what's taking a system a while to boot. And for that, we've created a true console experience. For that, you just basically hit remote console here. copy the password in. And again, you're then able to create this true console experience to access that system. And this is the system I just clicked to boot on. It is now activating. And unfortunately on this server, we don't reboot it very often, so it has a number of Windows updates to install. So in this particular case, that's why it's taking a while to boot. Once those updates are ready, I'll be able to interact with the system. Again, it's fully functional and set up in the cloud here. The one thing I'd really like to note here is we want to pre-configure everything. When you enable a system for DR, we preset it to go to storage that's been optimized for the kind of I/O running systems need. Additionally, we want you to test and pre-configure everything. It's one thing to say, oh yeah, I have a DR plan. It's another to say, yes, we have a DR plan. We've tested it, we've booted it, we've run it, we made sure everything works. We have a guidebook that not only you have, but we have a copy of. So on Christmas morning at 2 a.m. when someone calls in, their server is down, they call into support, and we have a guidebook that says, don't worry, you know what to do. You do these things here. First you boot up this server, then you boot up these other two. You flip this one setting in your DNS records, and you're ready to go. Again, we want to make sure that everybody's ready in the event of a disaster and everything is pre-planned. Just as an example, our CTO worked at one point for a place that printed checks for banks. They had a DR plan. Everything was pre-configured. They were all really happy with it. One day their servers actually went down, so they spun up their systems on their DR plan. Everything booted, everything looked great, until they realized their DR plan had no access to their printer. So they had access to pull up all the checks and be ready to print them, but they couldn't actually print them, which made their DR plan kind of useless, which again is why we want everything pre-tested and ready to go. Event of a disaster, Christmas 2 a.m., you don't want to be figuring out that kind of thing. You want everything tested. So last step here, your system's been up in the cloud, it's been running, everything's great. Eventually you want to get back down to your local hardware. So for that we have the failback. What we do here, it's a one-click process, it's actually very simple, but what actually happens in the background is we restore the system while it's still running in the cloud down to your server. Let's say that process takes 5 hours. Right, during that 5 hours, changes are still happening in the cloud. We're keeping track of those changes. We then run another incremental sync of just those changes that have happened in the last 5 hours at the block level down to that image. This time it takes an hour. We repeat that process again. And we do this over and over again until two criteria are met. One, that process is very, very short. Again, it's less than 5 minutes to boot. We want it to be even less than that to bring it back up and ready for you to use. And then two, you're ready for a couple minutes of downtime. Because again, we do have to shut you down in the cloud, but we try to minimize that downtime. But we want you to be ready. So it wouldn't happen in the middle of a work day. Maybe it'll happen at the end of the work day. At which point we shut you down in the cloud, run last incremental restore, and then you can spin up locally, and everything is good. So that's pretty much the crux of the demo here. Obviously, if you have any questions, again, our support is 24/7. Feel free to call or reach out to us, and we'll be happy to answer any of those questions then. But for now.
So it looks like we have quite a few questions that have come in. I'll go ahead and start reading these out, and I'll let you, Graham and Joe, address as appropriate. So first up, can Zetta back up a complete VM on Hyper-V or VMware?
Yes, we can. Again, you can either use the Windows image backup and choose all of the drives on the guest OS, or if you want to go agentless, we can work with Hyper-V where you install on the host and we back up the VMs of your choice. Or we have that virtual appliance for VMware where we use their APIs to get their full list of systems and do an agentless approach there as well.
Okay, great. Next up, do you have your own backend or do you use another vendor like ShadowShap or by Shadow Protect?
Everything is our own. We have our own hardware. Again, we have the two different data centers, but one thing that's great about us is, we're that single throat to choke, right? Something goes wrong, you contact us, everything is in-house. We don't have to contact another vendor and find out why something isn't working.
The background of this too is that the bottom line is that we were founded by folks who wanted to build something that they would want to buy. And so they've wanted to have complete control over how this all operates, which makes it easier for our support folks, seeing as how they can see the people who actually wrote the code and go over and talk to them if there's an issue.
How can we handle the initial backup? Is there a way to not do it over WAN?
It's a great question that comes up quite a bit. We can certainly work with you on a side load if you need to get a lot of data over to us. But what we have found is due to all of our optimization, by the time we ship you a drive overnight, obviously you load that on the drive, you overnight it to us, and then we load it up to your cloud, which we then have to encrypt. That takes a lot of time, and usually by the time that's all done, everything's already loaded. Because again, we've optimized everything here to be as quick as possible. Most of our customers' initial syncs can happen over a weekend. Now, if you have a lot of data, 25 terabytes, 30 terabytes, we can certainly work with you on getting this done, but we've definitely found that due to our optimization, it's usually best to just run it over the WAN.
So are these backups grandfather, father-son type backups, incrementals, synthetic fulls, etc.?
So every backup you do is fully substantiated. You can go into any of them. Our snapshots are grandfather, father-son in structure. But again, every backup we do, we're doing a full scan of your data to make sure everything matches in the cloud, but we only sync the changes we find over the network to optimize that procedure and make sure everything goes as quickly as possible.
Okay, great. Can I restore a physical image backup to a virtual environment? Yes.
When we back up the systems, we do go through the process of virtualizing that system. We actually have quite a few customers who have a server die, and rather than having to deal with new hardware, dissimilar hardware changes, they restore that as a VHDX for Hyper-V or directly into their VMware environment. We've been able to spin up that one physical server as virtual.
Where in the app can I decide what kind of image to restore? The last time I had to contact you to get the VMware image ready for me.
So if it's for VMware and it's backed up with VMware, it's very quick and easy. Let's see here. Again, if it was backed up with VMware to go to VMware, we can restore. You hit restore and you say directly into vCenter. So again, I would click restore here, restore VM disk image to vCenter, select which version. You then select which drive. Restore using the replication agent, which point you select the destination server. So you have multiple appliances. This is where you would choose which one. The data store, and then the destination VM name, and it restores directly down and attaches to that system. Now, if you wanted to restore for Hyper-V currently, you just click on restore for a system. Restore the version that you want. And again, you'd select either IMG or VHDX here.
Great. We have about 3 more questions, and we really appreciate all the questions coming in. Thank you guys so much for submitting them. Next up, if I activate a server in the cloud from 3 days ago, is there still an option to restore certain files which actually got backed up after the snapshot I used to bring up my DR machine?
Yes. We don't delete any of your snapshots or anything when you boot up from 3 days ago. Everything that was backed up since is still there. We actually stop further backups from happening while it's up in the cloud because we don't want to deal with which version it's coming from. But we do keep track of the changes as they're happening in the cloud. So you'll have access to both everything that's happened since you spun up in the cloud on this old image, as well as anything that backed up during that time period. So again, if you had a CryptoLocker virus, you spun up from 3 days ago in the cloud, but you have a couple of files you updated since that didn't get infected, you'd still be able to go through, grab those, and restore those down.
How do you compare to the offerings from AWS?
For the most part, what we found is that AWS is it's a good solution as long as you're prepared to make it work for you. And what you get from in a nutshell, what you get from a company like Zetta is a company that has made it work for you for the most part. And so what we're looking at is running, we run our own hardware within a couple of different Equinix data centers. And so they're all compliant, et cetera, et cetera. So essentially, what you get with us is the same type of pool of power and computational capability if you're talking DR, storage if you're talking about both DR and data protection, but with a front end that's been built over the past 8 years to be very easy to use and easy to manage.
It's also worth noting we're an all-inclusive model. So your CEO loses a file, you need to restore it, you restore it. You don't worry about additional costs. You don't worry about how long it's going to take to get. It's there. It's quick and easy to grab. Whereas with AWS, there's generally a fee associated with restores, getting things backed up. They have multiple different kinds of storage, including Glacier, which is cold storage. But again, you might have to second guess at that point, is this file really important enough that I have to pay this extra fee to get, or should we just try and work without it? Whereas with us, you don't even have to give homage to that thought. It's just, I need it, there it is, I got it, let's move on.
All right, looks like there's one last question. If a client already uses the cloud backup solution and wants to move to Zetta, is there any way to keep the history from the other provider?
And unfortunately, we haven't built plugins with particular providers. There are enough out there that we're not going to work on just one or just the other. So unfortunately, we would have to rebuild that history.
Okay, great. It looks like those are all of the questions. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you guys being on the call and appreciate all of the activity and questions you sent our way. And if you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out directly to Joe and also to Graham.
Yeah, the other person you could reach out to is our partner sales executive, Ash. Ash's email is very easy. It's ash@zetta.com. Thank you very much for your attendance today. We appreciate it.
Thanks. Have a great day, everybody.